I get this question multiple times a day. How did we scale to 90 rental units? This video is for you if you are trying to figure out how to buy your first property, how to get into real estate, how to scale what you already have. I'm going to walk you through what I actually did. People think there's this big aha moment where you just suddenly become a real estate investor and like there's this big theatrical moment. It's really not. What happened for me is that I watched my friend build her portfolio, leave her corporate job, all before I was even convinced to get in. And so one of the investors that she had actually done business with, she's like, "Hey, I know somebody. He's got two properties. He's got two properties for sale. One is a 3 unit and one is a 4 unit, and he wants to sell it off market." I was in. So the first properties we bought, one was 100,000 and the other one was 135,000. So let me run the math on that to see what we actually had to come up with. Because I don't remember this was in 2018. Yeah, I think that we actually purchased in 2018. So I said 235. We put down 20%. That's $47,000 actually attainable. And so what's important here is that I did not set out to buy 90 properties. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I actually thought that, once we got to, and I do multifamily. So when I say a property, I mean multiple doors. So I was originally thinking that, okay, if we get to 10 properties, because that's what my friend said. She's like, I don't want any more than 10. And so I was like, okay, we'll aim for 10 and we should be set because I had seen it work for somebody else. Now, she was single. She didn't have kids at the time. She didn't have any of the complexities of modern adulthood. And so it was very easy for her to actually just walk away. But by the time I got into real estate, I was living a different reality and my expenses were sky high and I was already used to high income corporate money and just all the things. So I thought 10 properties would do it. So we bought our first few. They seemed to be going well at the time, and probably because our purchase prices were so low. At those prices, one tenant would pay for all the expenses. And so you'd have two or three other tenants that was all profit. And so profit on paper, I should say, because that was before, the grass cutting and the management fees and all the other things that come in. But we had a pretty large buffer. And I was like, let's rinse and repeat. Like we can do this over and over and over again. And so some things that people have said in my comments are that I used mortgage schemes or I put no money down or all these things that are just, no, none of that happened. I put money down on every single property. I have 20+% equity in every single property that I buy. And there's no mortgage scheme. This is not a 0% down. This is not a seller financing. This isn't any of that. Like we do have a lot of debt. And I think that concerns a lot of people. This is kind of a sidebar, but once we got to a certain level, we met a mortgage broker and he actually helped us get all of those mortgages off of our personal credit. So my personal credit has nothing on it. Those mortgages now exist under my business name. So we do have debt, but it's not personal debt. So how do we keep going? We started pulling money from everywhere. Bonuses, stocks, selling stock. Once we got further down the track, we started taking appreciation out because I bought during a time where prices were really low. And so right around COVID and, 2023, 2024, properties had let's just call it average 150,000 in equity. And so we started pulling some of that to continue to scale. And one of the number one secret, like people are looking for the cheat code. The cheat code is to make more money at work. Like that is the cheat code. And so I job topped relentlessly. Like I probably had in my total career, I probably worked for 9 or 10 different companies. Like the longest I stayed anywhere was 4 years. And that was only one place. Everywhere else was 2, possible 3. But I job top relentlessly because the more and more money you can make at work, that's where you get the extra income. So I said we had to come up with $47,000 and my partner is my business partner. So I only had to come up with half of that. And so let's just call it $25,000. If you have a high paying job or you have managed your expenses to where you have a lot of extra income at the end of the day, that's not that hard to come up with. That's $2,000 a month. You can do that on YouTube. You can, whatever side hustle you have, you can come up with that in a year. You can have, there's bonuses, there's stock. A lot of people in corporate are making 20,000, sneezing at $20,000 bonuses. So it's not impossible. And I think a lot of people, and then the other thing is tax returns. I started using all of my tax returns toward real estate. And actually 1 year, my tax return, because I'm an active real estate investor and we have a ton of write-offs, my tax return was enough to buy property. So you just start getting really creative about how can I come up with the down payment. I know some people are of the mindset that they want to pay cash and they want to buy properties off, and you can do that too. It's just going to take you longer to do it. And I have a video coming up on, are mortgages actually worth it? Because I know that's a big decision point. Like, should I try to save to buy the property, or should I go take out debt, and how is that going to affect me? And I think what keeps most people out of the game is that if you're thinking you got to come up with it, back in the day, you had to come up with $150,000 depending on your market. Now you got to come up with $300,000. Like, you're not getting in the game. Like, that's 10 plus years if you're lucky. If you're lucky to ever save that amount of money in 10 years, 20 years, like, you did all that to get one property. So if that's how you're thinking about going about it, you will be sitting on the sidelines for a while. But it's much easier to come up with a 20% down payment depending on your market. And so it's the key is not that you need a lot of money. You don't need to be rich. You don't need a trust fund, but you do need to have some solid financial backing. You do need to be able to come up with $20, $30, $40,000 to get started. You got to be able to get your hands on that. And then you actually need a little bit more, because there's incidentals, there's closing costs. You buy a property, it may need $10,000 worth of work, once you get your foot in the door. So I would say get enough for your down payment and get 10 or 20% more than that, and put your foot on the gas. I think the thing that people underestimate and discount the most is time. The longer you wait to get in, the more money you will need to get in. And so that should help you make a decision. How much of a down payment am I trying to come up with? What amount of down payment can I come up with the quickest is the answer. Because I've shared this before. My friend who I'm talking about, who scaled her business, who quit her job before I even bought my first property, she was buying properties for $50,000. Like, of course she was able to quit her job. I mean, she paid them off like that. I mean, she just got in at a great time, and it just really cemented that, like, time is the cheat code, period. If you have enough of a down payment to get in, get in. So if I expand that out, because I think when people hear that I have 90 doors of real estate, they're like, some people actually said that's absolutely impossible for her specifically. But I think people just overestimate how much money that actually is. So I did a little bit of math. Let's say somebody buys 20 properties over several years. If the average property is around $100,000, which is what it was when I got in, that's a $2 million portfolio. But as I explained, I didn't need to come up with $2 million in cash to do that. I mean, I don't come from a rich family. I had to get it out the mud. I went to college. I was the first high income earner in my family. And so clearly $2 million was not sitting somewhere waiting for me. So I would have never gotten in if I was waiting on that perfect scenario. But if you look at how you can leverage cash at 20% down, that's $400,000. And so think about over the course of 8 or 10 years, $400,000, that's $40,000 a year. If you have a partner, if you have a husband, if you have anybody, that seems more doable. Now, I am going to be real with you that those are the numbers that worked in the past. Today, that $400,000 is probably going to get you around 6 properties. And keep in mind that could end up being 6 times 4. That could be 24 doors for you. But you see how time has even played a factor in that. Like, that amount of money got me 90 doors. Now it only gets you a third of that. And so my brand is called Confidence is Cash. And so I built everything around this acronym of CASH. The CASH framework is climb, allocate, secure, and harness. And so the very first step is climb. You have to climb whatever income ladder it is that you're on. You have to get as much money as you can before you can even get in the game, before you can even think about it. And so if you're barely getting by, if you don't have any extra income, that is your first task. Your first task is not, how do I get into real estate and buy a property? Like, how do I get extra income? Because even with the stock game, you need extra income. Like, you need to have $1,000 extra to invest in yourself every month. And I know people, sell that $25 to do it. Yeah, it's better than nothing. But at $25 a month, you're not going to be able to quit your job anytime soon. And even for retirement, I mean, it's not going to be growing at the clip where you're actually going to feel the effects of it. So I'll say this again, getting out of the mud is 100% possible, but it's going to be pretty tough for you, and because it literally takes money to make money. And then the other reason why you just got to get in the game, if it's something you want to do, whatever it is because the cheat code, you don't really start seeing the full benefits until you get in. Because now you have the appreciation working for you. Now you have the write-offs working for you. Now your income tax return is substantial. Now you have all these other sources of income that you didn't even have before. And so now every year you're just sitting on more and more cash, and we just kept buying and buying. It most certainly is not about, coming into a windfall of cash or winning the lottery. It is 100% about leveraging what you have, being consistent. And if there's one thing I've learned from this journey is that scaling and freedom are not the same thing. And so if you watch any of my other videos, you know that I have scaled, and I've scaled myself into a bit of a mess. The business has become an operational nightmare, and it's something I really have to stay on top of. And so I haven't necessarily reached that freedom point. And so, yes, you can use me as a cautionary tale that more buildings does not necessarily lead to freedom, but it does lead to options. And if I wanted to liquidate everything and move on and do something else, I still have that option. I have options that people who never got in the game don't have. And so for years, I thought I needed more properties to scale. And now I'm kind of reconsidering that. I'm thinking, how do I scale back? How do I reduce the operational drag? How do I reduce the expenses and run a smaller portfolio? But I am a huge fan of fail fast. And now that I'm at a certain level, I've learned tons of lessons. I've experienced all sorts of different problems. I've taught myself all sorts of skills, and I would do it all over again. So if you're watching this and you're trying to get into real estate, my advice for you is simple. Do not focus on 90 doors. Do not focus on scaling anything. Focus on getting yourself in a position where you can comfortably come up with the money to get yourself in. And the reality is, can you come up with that money over and over and over again? Because maybe you take a different approach than I took. Maybe you don't buy more and more properties. Maybe you start, diversifying. Maybe you start diversifying early on, your property here, stocks here, REITs here, and doing things like that, which is what I'm trying to do now on the back end. Whatever it is you're going to do, you got to focus on building a repeatable system. Something that's going to work for you if you're working a job, if you just really don't want to work that hard, like I did. I have a large portfolio, but it's a lot of work, and I'm in a different season now. I'm like, I really don't want to work that hard. I now see that to accumulate money doesn't really require a lot of hard work, consistent hard work. It's usually hard work to get in, and then you can kind of coast your way out. And so I would say consider that when you're thinking about what kind of portfolio do I want, how much do I want to scale. And I think the final thing I want to share with you guys is that I did not build a portfolio of this size because I was smarter than anybody or I was richer than anybody. I simply saw a path, had a plan, and stuck to it. It's literally about taking action, even when you're unsure. It's like, you can't learn, you can't advance, you won't get anything unless you put yourself out there and you take the action before you're ready. And so I mentioned I use leverage, I use appreciation, I use refinancing, I use promotions, I use bonuses. There's one other thing that was really key in me being able to scale, and I am going to drop that in a bonus video for the Cash Crew. So if you're interested in knowing what the real key to scaling is, you'll want to go ahead and join the Cash Crew membership here on YouTube. My name is Jerry, and if you're still here, do me a favor, go ahead and give that like button a smash. Keep building that confidence. Keep building that cash, y'all. I make videos for ambitious people who want to live life on their terms. And if you want to get a behind the scenes look on my businesses, you want to follow me over on Substack at Confidence is Cash. And you'll want to check the link in the description to get the action plan and playbook for this episode. I produce them for every single episode. It's called the ASAP. The link for it is in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.